Okay, in this fourth installment of the Maya Basics, we're just going to look at actually creating primitives and altering the properties of primitives. So primitives are the base meshes that you can start off with in Maya or in any 3D application. They have a set of primitives, and they're usually the same kind of things. So sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, torus, and plane are the basic ones that are in most systems. Maya also has some other ones, similarly as 3ds Max has with the famous teapot. But really what we're looking at is how to actually get these on screen and start manipulating them. So in Maya we have two places we can do this. We've looked at the shelves in one of the earlier Maya Basics tutorials, and with our default shelf we have our poly modeling, and we have access to these tools here. So any one of these I can just click and it can appear on screen. Okay. And what this will do is give our base properties for any of these objects. Okay. So let's just click on a cube. So what this is actually doing is creating a cube that's a centimeter by a centimeter by a centimeter, centimeter squared, in the middle of the world grid 0, 0, 0 on the X, Y, and Z axes. Now note when I'm clicking on these tools, it's just straight away creating the object. And this was another thing that when I started using Maya, again there wasn't as much information about Maya then, but it kind of confused me when other people were doing this and theirs was just appearing on the screen. Mine was doing something else. I was having to drag mine out. And the reason for this can be found in the other place to create the primitives. So in the modeling menu set, if I just go to create Polygon Primitives, we have the same things here as well. But if I just go down here, we have this option for interactive creation. So if I just check that on for now and go back over here and let's say do a cube. So you see now it actually gives me a tooltip on this, and now if I want to create a cube, I have to drag out, unclick, and then click again and drag up to set the height. And the same, well, different kind of things. For a sphere it's just one drag out. For a cylinder we have a drag for the radius and then a drag up, and different options. So you may find if you're watching a tutorial they're creating their objects like that instead. Now this is a thing of personal preference. I personally like to have it so that the object just appears straight in the middle of the viewport and then I can start modeling with it, because generally I am starting to model at 0, 0, 0, and if I do it with this interactive creation, what I'm having to do is then often drag that back into the middle. And I would change the properties anyway, size them up to whatever I wanted to do, or scale it up straight away anyway. So personally I prefer this interactive creation clicked off. That's just me personally, completely up to whichever one you prefer. Okay. So in terms of changing the properties on this, so if I again just create a cube, I'm just going to press F to focus in on this. So what we have here is a cube with certain properties. So this is just 6 polygons or 6 faces. As said before, a centimeter squared. If we actually want to create something with different properties straight away, what we can do is go into create Polygon Primitives, and then at the side of any of these, and this is the same with any menu set, we have options that we can go into, so the different properties. So if I go into the one for cube, here we can set different properties. So if I wanted to create a cube that was 10 centimeters by 10 by 10 and had 2 subdivisions, let me just click create, just press focus. That's going to create my cube like that. And then if I create a cube anytime from whichever menu, it's going to do it with those properties. Now again, this is something I don't like to do because it sticks me to this, and then if I want to change it I have to go back into the settings and change it there. So I would have to go back into create, go back into the cube settings and change it here. Or I can just go to edit, reset, set back to the default, apply, and that way that sets it back to there. So I don't personally like doing it that way. So the way that I prefer to change the properties is actually through either the channel box or the attribute editor. So if I just select this object, Over here we have our channel box, and we also have the attribute editor. If you don't have them, you can find them in our Windows, and we have our general editors, attribute editor, channel box, and layer editor. We have them there. Can also do a Control A, which will kind of toggle between the two as well, or if they're not up, it will actually open them up as well. So the channel box and attribute editor have similar purposes in a way. They contain the same kind of information. We can access all the properties for any object we have selected. The channel box use more for setting properties, especially for animation. The attribute editor, you sometimes have a few more things that you can access more easily in there. Again, it depends really what you're doing to which one of these you use. So channel box I generally have when I'm modeling open, and definitely for animation I use this. Attribute editor if I'm using more complex things, dynamic simulations, skeletal rigs, I want to get a bit further into the properties, I would go into the attribute editors. But we have similar things within this. So just starting out with a channel box, if I have my object selected down here, we have the name of this object, and then I can go down, and in this input we have this. So when we start adding things to our object, we have a list here essentially. So this almost is your history. It's the stack of what's happening to your object. So at this first instance, I've just created this, so all we have on here is the input, polycube 1. If I click on that and open it, we now have the properties for this object. So if I want to change these, what I can do is go down, and I can actually highlight more than one thing. So let's do what I did before, set those to 10. Highlight these, just clicking in and dragging down, and let's set these to 2. And I can actually change the properties of that straight away, okay? And I can go in and change those properties whenever. What you find is when you manipulate an object, sometimes when you go back to these, which it will allow you to do, to allow you to go back to this. So just as an example, and I haven't gone over some objects yet, but just as an example, if I just go in and just manipulate this object a little bit, okay, I can still go into this and I can still edit it, but you see it causes issues in here sometimes. So that's something to be aware of. You are best actually setting the properties initially before you start doing too much to your primitive object. So if I just Control Z that, go back on myself. Another thing to be aware of is if we start duplicating an object. So the most basic way to duplicate an object is to do a Control D for duplicate. So if I Control D this, move this to one side. So this is my copied object, and if you notice here, we don't have the input on this. We still have on this one, so I still can go into this one and change the properties here, but I can't directly change the properties of the duplicated mesh. Can't speak. The copy essentially. If you need to do that, if you want to do that and create a duplicate, which we can also affect, what you would have to do is do a duplicate special. So if I go into the properties for this duplicate special, if I just do a geometry type copy, and what we'd need to do is duplicate the input graph on this and apply. And now with my copy, pcube shape 2, you can see I do have access to those initial properties as with this one. Okay, so you just have to work a little differently if you do want to do that. So that's just creating simple primitives and actually going in and changing the properties of those primitives. And that's the end of this tutorial.